40 attacks in 3 years. That's how much onslaught INEC officers nationwide have come under in discharge of their duties. As INEC chairman gives account, the police gives insight into those responsible, plus a look at the reports on PVC for cash trend. And the Nigeria which Nigerians desire takes the center stage tonight as we analyze the policy plans of one of the candidates vying for the top job in the country. Well, hello and welcome to the nation's flagship political show. I'm Kayode Okikelu here at Channels Television's global headquarters in Lagos. Well, it's just a few days to Christmas, but it would seem the political season is actually competing with the Yuletide for prominence. Perhaps maybe we'll settle for a political Christmas. Why? Because we have campaigns, PVC collection, INEC's preparations, and of course your decision-making process, all of that put together for this season and even beyond. And just to push that home the more, we're now 70 days away from the 2023 elections. That's right, we're continuing our countdown to the polls, 70 days. And research in other climes has shown that majority of voters usually make up their minds on who to vote for just about a month or few weeks to elections. Some even decide on election day. So the preceding days to elections matter a lot, and we're here to help you on that journey. Well, let's start off tonight at the National Assembly, where the House of Representatives has set up a committee to investigate the recent attacks on INEC's facilities in some states in a bid to forestall further attacks. And today's hearing saw the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, the representative of the Inspector General of Police, speaking on the attacks, as well as a representative of the Attorney General. They spoke about the attacks and what is being done by their respective ministries and agencies. First, the INEC chairman painted a picture of just how widespread these attacks have been in the past 4 years. Now, according to statistics from the Electoral Umpire, from 2019 till date, 50 incidents of attacks on INEC offices have been recorded from 15 states. Take a listen.
The offices were destroyed nationwide during protests. Some of the protests have nothing to do with elections, or by the activities of Boko Haram or bandits or unknown gunmen. So these attacks cannot be attributed in the main to election violence. Should such attacks continue at the pace at which they are happening at the moment, the Commission may find it increasingly difficult to recover in good time for the election. If it's about stopping the attacks, yes, we can recover. But if the attacks continue, it will be very difficult for the Commission to recover.
So the breakdown, according to the INEC chairman, shows that in 2019, 8 incidents were recorded across 4 states. Then the attacks hit an all-time high in 2020 following the NSAS protests with 22 incidents from 9 states. That was in 2020. Fast forward to 2021, where there were 12 incidents in seven states, while this year so far there have been 8 incidents from 5 states, and they include Ogun, Osun, Imo, Ebonyi, and Enugu. But that was not all that played out today. There was some confusion when the representative of the Attorney General of the Federation claimed that no request for prosecution of persons arrested for attacks on INEC facilities had been received so far from any security agency or INEC. But then he later denied his earlier submission, claiming that the Office of the AGF had received prosecution requests from the DSS, but could not state the details.
Office of the Attorney General is in charge of prosecutions. Whether IG office, DSS, other security agencies, once they forward cases to us for prosecution, with particular reference to the subject matter in discussions now, which has to do with the arrest and prosecution on attacks on offices of INEC. So as far as the office is concerned, we have not formally received any request for prosecution on that one.
But he later contradicted and said, well, there have been some from DSS, but that's not all. The representative of the Inspector General of Police made a startling revelation and perhaps an indictment on some governors, as he said that most times when they arrest suspects, the state executives find ways to secure the release of those suspects. To take a listen.
If the suspect involved belong to a particular camp, maybe the governor is in charge of that state, and some of his followers were arrested. You see a lot of pressure coming to us, pressure for release, for bail. Even when we deny bail, we charge to court. They go to the court and find a way and release their members.
Oh, clearly a long way to go. But that aside, yes, it's a major one, but there's also another issue that has been brewing, and it concerns the CBN's latest policy on cash withdrawal limit. Well, there's now new opposition to that latest policy, this time from the Arawa Consultative Forum, the ACF. In a statement issued by Secretary General Murtala Aliyu, the group notes that because of low financial penetration in Nigeria, women, rural dwellers, micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, and northern Nigeria will be among the most disproportionately excluded. A part of the statement release reads, if the CBN insists on implementing this wholly unrealistic policy of restricting individuals' cash withdrawal from the banks to 20,000 naira per day and 100,000 naira for a week, or 500,000 naira in the case of corporate bodies, it won't be long before we suffer a catastrophic collapse of the informal sector of the economy. Goes on to say, more than anyone, CBN knows that transactions in commodity markets, especially in the rural areas, are entirely cash-based. Well, the forum asks the CBN to allow a level playing field for a wide range of financial providers and to enforce strict regulations that protect people's money and inform, encourage, and prepare the public adequately for the transition. It insists that until the CBN is able to address the challenges substantially, a preemptive move, or what it describes as a frog jump into cashless payment system, however well-intentioned, will only land the country into a bottomless pit. So that's perhaps the latest on that one. But let's bring you some other trending political stories. It's been a busy day, in fact, a busy week. Here's your political roundup.
Eligible voters in Ogun State, especially in Abeokuta local government area, seem to be having a difficult time collecting their permanent voter cards ahead of the 2023 general elections. A visit to the local government office of the Independent National Electoral Commission shows some residents staying longer than necessary to get their PVC. Some residents could not find their names on the register and raised concerns over the possibility of being disenfranchised.
They'll be here since 8 o'clock, some say it's 7 o'clock, but till now they have not collected.
I'm told that the form I filled did not show that I showed that I had a previous card, which I told them my card is lost and I wanted a transfer.
Former Senate President Dr. Bukola Saraki has blamed what he terms the non-performance of the ruling All Progressives Congress-led administration as the reason he and his supporters left the party. Senator Saraki said this while addressing his supporters during the inauguration of 850 persons into the campaign council in Ilorin, the Kwara State capital. Members of the campaign council promised to reclaim the state from the APC at the poll.
Some of us asked us, yes, but we came with this government. But when we saw what they were doing, we said we cannot continue with you.
Over 5,000 northern support groups of the All Progressives Congress have promised to mobilize 18 million votes from the Northwest for the presidential candidate of the party, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, during the 2023 general elections. Speaking at an interactive session with the leadership of the APC Presidential Campaign Council in Kaduna, the coordinator of the coalition, Mr. Bafa Dan Agundi, described Tinubu as a bridge builder who will use his experience as a public administrator to develop every part of the country. A governorship aspirant of the All Progressives Congress in Cross River State, Senator John Owan, has rejected the judgment of the Court of Appeal sitting in Calabar, the Cross River State capital, affirming Senator Bassi Otu as a Cross River governorship candidate of the party in the state. Senator Owan Eno has promised to seek redress at the Supreme Court. He had earlier approached the court to stop Senator Otu from parading himself as the governorship candidate of the party and declare him as the rightful candidate. Delivering the judgment on behalf of the three-man panel of judges, Justice Elfreda Daodu, however, dismissed his claim and maintained that Senator Otu remains the authentic candidate of the APC in the state.
Well, now that you're well acquainted, let's get into the meat of the program. Our first conversation is a very important one, as it touches on the people's right to vote, your right to vote. Yesterday, we promised to bring you this crucial conversation, so let's give you some background to it. About 3 days after the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, opened its doors for PVC collection nationwide, the Northern Elders Forum dropped a bombshell saying that thousands or possibly even millions of voters are being made to surrender their PVCs for pittance, in most instances not more than 2,000 naira. I mean, that should naturally jolt anyone who is interested in a free, fair and credible election. So let's drill deeper, because this is a very, very crucial conversation. It concerns you, it concerns our nation. And to do that with us, we're joined on the program tonight by Dr. Hakeem Baba Ahmed, who is the Director of Publicity and Advocacy, Northern Elders Forum. He joins us live from our Abuja studio. Good evening, sir, and thank you for honoring our invite yet again. It's deeply appreciated.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, startling, really, and I imagine that's the case for a lot of Nigerians. But for the benefit of those who may have missed that statement you put out regarding your investigations into reports of people exchanging their PVCs for 2,000 naira, please tell us, what are your findings?
Well, exactly as we said in the statement, we took some time. We've been hearing about these rumors. Then we did some investigation in the last few months, and we made some informal contacts with INEC just to make sure that what we're hearing in towns and villages is true. INEC naturally would not divulge sensitive information to groups like Northern Elders Forum unless they're sure that what we're talking about is credible. But eventually we began to hear about arrests, we began to hear about possible prosecutions, and then INEC itself a few days ago released a statement saying there is the practice of buying PVCs from potential voters is occurring on a fairly large scale. We then decided to release our statement, which also captured part of our findings. In the north, which is where we did a lot of this investigation, huge numbers of women especially have been made to part with their PVCs. Some for a little bit of money, like you said, 1,000 naira, 2,000 naira. Others for some money and a promise that they would be processed for some kind of welfare scheme. And it's going on a very large scale. Worrying enough for us to say we need to speak up. But we didn't do that until we heard from INEC some confirmation independent of our own investigations. And we're very worried about it. Because if it is not arrested, potentially a huge number of people, particularly from the north, which is where, again, we did our investigation, are going to be disenfranchised. People would have gone through the rigors of voting, overcome skepticism, overcome hostility. We knew what we went through convincing Northerners to go and register this time. So we succeeded. The North has a majority of voters, and we're looking forward to 2023 when every person, every Nigerian would vote, hopefully for a major change and shift in the political situation of the country. And to have people just sitting at home because somebody had bought their cards, they can't use it, according to INEC. The person who has sold the card can't use it either. It's called voter suppression. We've seen it somewhere else. We know it's practiced in many other countries using different tactics and strategies. But it's a very worrying phenomenon. I have to say it's not just taking place in the north, but a huge part of it is capitalizing on the poverty, particularly of women. And people are being separated from their voters' cards.
Indeed, and that ties to what has been raised severally, the weaponization of poverty. But I mean, we all know how much hassle people went through trying to register for these cards, then eventually getting the cards only to give it up. In your findings, are you able to, pinpoint who is responsible for this? Who is organizing this, exchange of PVC for pittance, for some promise? Do we have an idea who is perpetrating this voter suppression, as you put it?
We were not able to establish a specific partisan bent on this. There are huge numbers of people involved in this. It appears that the targeting is real. They target the most vulnerable, which is women. In the north, more women vote than men. More women have an interest in election activities. And on voting days, a lot more women turn out to vote. And the economy makes them more vulnerable. So it's a targeted, conscious and deliberate effort to reduce each other's support. People look at areas where they are strong and where the opponent is strong, where the opposition is strong. And what they do is they go into places where particularly opposition is strong and they buy off PVCs. If you don't have a PVC, you cannot vote. This is what INEC tells us. The technology does not allow you to vote without your own PVC. If you have somebody else's PVC, you cannot vote either. That's what we understand, and we believe INEC. And so what appears to be going on is that virtually everybody else is involved in this. Because it's been taking place in the last few months secretly, it is now becoming an outrage. You can hear the outrage. We decided to go public. Principally, that statement you referred to was meant to alert people. Under any circumstances, no one should part with their PVC. In the North in particular, we have paid a huge price in the last 7 years under this administration. And to sell your voter's card for 2,000 naira or 1,000 naira, we understand some people would rather part with their card and get 2,000 naira because there's a lot of apathy, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration. People have very low faith that the democratic process will turn around and make their lives more secure, more comfortable economically, give their children hope. We understand all that, but what we're trying to do with that statement is to say this thing is going on, it's not worth it. Don't sell your future for 2,000 naira or 1,000 naira. Hold on and vote credible leadership that may turn the country around. That is the whole point of this. But it is, you can't attribute this practice to one party. We didn't have the evidence to say it's this particular party that is doing it. We've seen a lot of people buying our cards. Difficult to pin who they are doing it for, but the practice is well known. It's called voter suppression. It means disenfranchising a lot of people so that you weaken the opposition.
I think it's important to state and restate this. INEC has said that without the PVC, or at least even if you were to get someone's PVC, you can't vote with it because there's a bimodal voter accreditation system. So to that extent, it is futile. But clearly, as you said, this is being done. Just to be clear, when you say that it's meant to reduce, the support for others, you are essentially saying this is being perpetrated by politicians and political parties. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. It's been practiced by political parties, politicians, and across the whole spectrum. The practice is just simply find out where opposition is strong, take away as many PVCs from that particular locality, and make sure that there's potential voting numbers are reduced. It's known across the world. Maybe it's relatively new in Nigeria.
Indeed. So you said that you put out that statement to alert people. And I wonder just how maybe people would receive this. Because you said, there's a lot of poverty in the land. That is not an excuse. But imagine someone looking at his pocket and thinking, okay, I could earn something for giving out this PVC. And we just rationalize and think, well, it's better to give up your PVC than to die. What sort of messaging then should be going out to people? And from everyone who is responsible, every stakeholder, to be going out to people such that they understand what is at stake. Because as I said, some might value, naturally, their lives more than the PVC.
Well, we're hoping that this program, for instance, will be very useful. When we have raised our voices in many fora, in many situations, and we'll continue to do that. Poverty is a terrible thing. We all know that. But if, in spite of the suffering that the Northerners have gone through in the last 7 years, somebody will be desperate enough to sell their PVC for 1,000 naira or 2,000 naira. It tells you how vulnerable our people are. But we've also raised another issue in that statement where we said, even with the PVC, the federal government has to do a lot of work to reduce the vulnerability of citizens to violence. huge pockets of populations in the north, in the whole entire north, are likely to be disenfranchised because of insecurity, either because INEC cannot deploy for election purposes, or because people can't move around or come out on voting days freely to vote. And it's a huge, huge problem. It has to be tackled decisively, and it has to be done comprehensively. It's been done before. We've seen it done in 2014 when Jonathan even had to postpone an election to sort of push back the threats to the population. If you look at the southeast, only people who are deeply in self-denial will tell you that we are dealing with a national emergency. You cannot allow IPOB, ESN, or unknown soldiers, or unknown gunmen, or whoever, even if they have no name, their activities are targeted clearly at preventing people, ordinary citizens who have labored to get PVCs, who want to vote, who want to change the course of the Nigerian nation. They're being prevented from voting because people are just burning up INEC facilities. This is unacceptable, and it should not be an issue between the people of the Southeast and INEC and the government. It's a Nigerian issue. What kidnappers are doing, what bandits are doing in the north, what Boko Haram is doing in the north, is not a northern problem. It's a Nigerian problem. Millions of Nigerians are under threat of not being able to vote, in spite of the fact that they will have PVCs in February next year. They will be willing to vote, but they cannot vote because they will be kept out of the voting process and out of the electoral process and out of deciding the future of this country because insecurity has prevented them. They are hostages of an insecure nation. And that's why we're calling on President Muhammadu Buhari and the government and the governors and politicians. We must do everything to free this country and allow everybody who has registered. We've never had, in the history of this country, we've never had the numbers of Nigerians who have registered. Please, they didn't just register in vain. Even people under territories being captured, being kept under violence. People have their PVCs. Those PVCs must count on the days that people will vote. It doesn't matter who they are or where they are. Southeast, northeast, northwest, they are Nigerians. They are entitled to be freed to come and vote and decide who will lead Nigeria. If you don't do that, then all the problems that people went through and all the stress and all the problems people have gone through to register and wait and struggle to get PVCs is all in vain. And more importantly, you've kept millions of Nigerians out of the process that should help to decide the future of this country.
Well, Dr. Baba Ahmed, when you made reference to what former President Goodluck Jonathan did then, pushing the election forward just to allow, especially security, to secure the elections, and you've raised some issues which have been a major source of concern, the attacks on INEC's facility and this latest voter suppression by purchasing people's PVCs. Are you suggesting, just to be clear, also that perhaps a postponement might be a possibility for this government to explore in order to maybe nip these issues in the bud and ensure that we have free, fair, and credible and secure elections?
No, I'm not suggesting anything like that. I'm suggesting that if there is the political will, this government can substantially reduce the level of vulnerability to which our people are exposed. They can do it, and they must do it. It is not up to them to decide which Nigerian gets to vote and which Nigerian doesn't get to vote. They have a duty to free the population in the southeast enough from the stranglehold of IPOB and ESN so that people can come out on the 2 election days and vote. They have to free people from the threats of bandits and kidnappers and hostage takers and Boko Haram in the north and in all parts of the country. It is a duty this government owes this country. They have to do it. And what we need is 2 things, the will and the capacity of the ruling government and the voices of everybody. People must raise their voices. Where are the people who represent the people of the Southeast? Who is speaking out against the violence that is going on? Just before I came on air, I had what happened in the House today. How many elite from the Southeast are raising their voices in support of the rights of the people of the Southeast to participate? huge numbers of people believe that they should vote. They have a candidate. They think they have a candidate who can be president of this country. And yet insecurity can stop them from voting. If the people who are now keeping people at home decide that, nope, you're not coming out on the voting days, who is going to go there and fight and make sure that people come out and vote? In Katsina, in Kaduna State, in Kebbi, in Zamfara, in Sokoto, in virtually the whole North Southwest, there are huge communities that will not be able to come out and vote. INEC cannot deploy in a situation where their personnel and their facilities are insecure and unsafe. So all these things have to be addressed, and we cannot reach February 2013 with the same kind of situation we're dealing with now.
2023,
the House of Representatives is paying as much attention. Yes.
Right. Clearly, there are responsibilities for literally everyone. I mean, we've talked about what the House of Reps is doing. INEC has given its statement, said what they've had 50 attacks in 4 years. But, back to that PVC for Pittance. I mean, that's how it's being captioned in some quarters. What role do you see for security agencies to play in this one? Because we've seen time and again, even on election day, you see vote buying taking place in the presence of security officials. And they go, well, our hands are tied, literally, because one, you need proof. You need to take it to court, the whole prosecution. I mean, listen to what the police said about the role of governors as well in freeing some of these suspects. So for this particular one, is there any role for security agencies such that at least, yes, it may have gone on for this long, but we can stop it where it is now?
Well, absolutely. I mean, INEC is helpless. INEC cannot on its own arrest the people involved in this practice. So security agencies need intelligence. If people know this thing is going on, they should tell the police, they should tell the SSS, and they do have a role. They must if we know this, and we are just ordinary civilians, if we know this, and people are telling us this, and showing us evidence, and showing us women who have had to part with their cards, and other young people and other adults, then obviously it's security agencies can find out what's going on. And for goodness sake, prosecute people. Let us see people being prosecuted. These are crimes. Under the Electoral Act, it's a crime to interfere in the electoral process. And these voter suppression, vote buying are the same things. If you take away somebody's card and give him money, or you go to the polling point and you give somebody money and you tell him, vote this person right there in front of everybody, those are crimes. People should be arrested. But we want to see arrests, and we believe that the police and the other security agencies need to get involved in this. INEC needs to be supported.
Right.
They cannot do these things on their own.
Well, Doctor, maybe by way of driving home the point even further, if these issues are not resolved, first, the PVC, the voter suppression or PVC sale, the security issues, what kind of election then will we have on our hands come February the 25th if we go into elections the way we're at now? What kind of elections and results would we get?
Well, first of all, across the country, you're going to have huge numbers of people. I cannot say now, but if we allow this practice to go on the way it's going, you're going to have a huge number of people who have gone through the frustrations and the pains of being registered as voters, being disenfranchised. That means those people are out of the process. They've been rendered simply as spectators. So this is the largest number of registered voters ever in the history of this country. And I can't even hazard a guess about how many people will be disenfranchised. Two, insecurity is likely to keep quite enough, maybe 1 million or 2 million or 5 million, I don't know. But the more they succeed in crippling INEC facilities and services, the more they will get encouraged. The more bandits and kidnappers and sergeants in the Northeast recognize the fact that the state is weak, the more they are likely to say to people, no, you can't go out and vote. So we are likely to have an election that has a large number of people who are being kept out of the process. In areas where people are really eager to vote and you stop them, you are delegitimizing the leadership that will emerge, because a lot of people will feel they own nothing. But if I vote in an election, I feel I have a stake. I have at least expressed a desire to see who will govern me. So we'll have large numbers of Nigerians who have been rendered useless in this process. So, and we want an election that will be credible. We want an election that will involve everybody who has PVC, and we want an election that will be acceptable and accepted by all Nigerians and politicians, because all Nigerians have participated. Everybody who has a card and who is willing to go and vote has participated in that election. If you keep huge segments of the population out of this, they become indifferent to the outcome of the election. They had no part in it, and we don't want that. We have some worries about what will happen between now and when the elections take place, and what is likely to play out after the elections. But the more people you have who are participating, the more people you have who are voting, the more credible the electoral process is, the more the possibility that the things that we worry us, post-election violence, post-election disputes,
all right,
those things are likely to have less of an impact on the electoral process and the political process.
Okay,
so
few issues to raise.
Of Nigerians out of, yeah.
Right, you can land on that point. I'd like to raise some other issues, please.
I'm saying keeping large numbers of people who are interested in voting, who have labored to get PVCs out either because of insecurity or because somebody has capitalized on their poverty and deprived them of the right to have a stake in terms of who can. It's not good for the democratic process. It hasn't been growing and working for the population. And now we are keeping out even more people outside the electoral process. That is not good for Nigeria.
Indeed. I know you're quite active also on social media. I've seen some of your exchanges in the build-up to this election. I mean, your responses to people as well. And I wonder for you, are you rooting for your brother, who is a vice presidential candidate of the Labour Party?
I'm rooting for the best the candidate for Nigeria. If Deti and Peter happen to be those people, I will vote for them. Currently, I am part of a process in which the Northern Elders Forum is involved, of allowing as much as possible a level playing field for all candidates. You are aware of the fact that we organized the Kaduna and the Arewa forum, where we provided a level playing field for 5 candidates to come and tell Nigerians what they plan to do if they become president. We've been doing a lot of other things. The North is the only region yet that hasn't adopted a candidate, and it's deliberate. We want Northerners to see the candidates. We want Northerners to assess them. We believe that Northerners are intelligent enough and wise enough to make up their minds. We will encourage a level playing field for all candidates. We would encourage a violence-free election campaign.
Right.
And we welcome all candidates to come and convince us that they are the best, including my younger brother and Peter Obi. They have access to the North.
Right. Pardon me, we have to run now.
Welcome.
Right, we have to run now, but really, Doctor, is there anything wrong in rooting for your brother? I mean, he's your brother after all, and you always expect and wish the best for him.
Are you giving me an opinion, or you're asking me for my opinion?
No, I'm asking actually, is there anything wrong in rooting for him? I mean, I understand that people have asked you that question time and again.
Absolutely none. Absolutely none. None. Absolutely none. If he's my brother and he's the best, their ticket is the best, I would support them entirely. Like I said, I'm open. I'm open, and I'm looking like most Northerners we encourage. Don't just jump into a decision. We have about 2 months to go. Let's wait and see. Let's assess these candidates, and we hope that there will be enough freedom for them to move around and sell their programs and their vision. And I think that a lot of people are excited about Deti and Peter Obi. And there are other people who want other candidates. The North should be accessible. The North
Right.
should be free. The North should be a level playing field for everybody. But ultimately, Northerners must participate in full numbers in the process that will determine who becomes the president, who becomes
Right.
governors, who becomes National Assembly people.
Well, we have to run now, but it's been a pleasure speaking with you. We're speaking with Dr. Hakeem Baba Ahmed, who is a spokesperson of the Northern Elders Forum. Thank you so much for your time on the program tonight, sir.
Thank you very much.
Well, we'll take a moment now, and when we return, our next guest will be the presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party, Barrister Adebayo Adewale. He'll be speaking on his plans to surmount the challenges of our nationhood if elected president in 2023. Stay with us. Well, you're welcome back. Now, when you head to the polls on February the 25th, you'll need to make a choice between 18 political parties. And that's like having a multiple choice question with 18 options. Yeah, 18 of them. And you have to get it right. So, in continuation of our analysis of a candidate's policy plans and their grasp of what is at stake for us as a nation, we're joined on the program by Barrister Adebayo Adewale, who is a presidential candidate of a Social Democratic Party, as a founder of Pittance TV as well. Good evening, sir, and thank you for joining us on the program.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, you were in Kano to open your campaign HQ there, quite an edifice. And that's a state, incidentally, that your party, the SDP, barely had 700 votes the last time out. In fact, you had 635 votes. And the question will be, I mean, what's different this time around? If you had parties that had, hundreds of thousands of votes, I mean, they might say they have a stake, but for your party, what would you say is different this time around?
Well, your analysis short-circuited. This was also a state where we won at the presidential election in 1993. So, and you know the history that in recent election, our candidates were in court and we were not competitive. We didn't campaign. But if you go to Kano now, you will know that we are highly competitive in Kano. You go to all of the 44 local governments, people are supporting us and we're working very hard. Kano is a place where you can always have electoral justice. You can be rewarded for what you do. If you walk the town, you talk to the people. Kano is not afraid to go with a Lone Ranger. Kano is not afraid to go with any person whose principles agree with the idea of helping the Talakawas, of eradicating poverty, of eradicating insecurity, of working with the people. Kano is independent, so we're doing very well in Kano, and we are having alliances and discussions in Kano. I doubt if any political party can defeat us in Kano, the way we are now.
And I mean, we can hold you by those words eventually when the elections are conducted. And I mean, let's analyze what you hope to sell to the people then, since, I mean, you are quite confident about what will be your showing in the elections. Just yesterday, the World Bank says it will take the North 40 years to catch up with the South, considering the current growth rate. First, do you agree with that projection? I mean, you've been in Kano, you've been around the northern states. Do you agree with that?
Well, my aim is not for the North to catch up with the South. My aim is for the North and South to catch up with the 21st century. So even that analysis is not useful to us because even in the South, has a comparative advantage. The South is also awash with poverty, underdevelopment, insecurity. So what I want to generally is to look at the North and let the North catch up with the rest of the world, not just catching up with the South. So the idea is not relativity of poverty. The North is poor, the South is poor. Maybe the North is a little poorer. So what we need to do is to make sure that we make investment in our people. Once we eradicate poverty across the country, it wouldn't matter whether you're in the North or in the South, the indices of poverty are the same, which is that people have no access to good food, people don't have no access to good housing, people have no access to good medical education, medical provision, people have no access to education, people are not given basic infrastructure to live in the 21st century, people don't have security of tenure in many things that they do in terms of employment, in terms of working on the street, in terms of being able to travel across the country. people don't have upward mobility. So once we invest in all of those things, whether you're in the north or you're in the south, I can guarantee you that an SDP government will be able to eradicate poverty in this country. And at that time, we'll have a new paradigm where now people are now being judged by the talent that they have. People are now being judged by their ability to be productive. So that's what we are trying to do. That was what we promised in 1993 in that book, Farewell to Poverty. And that's what we're promising now in Farewell to Poverty and Insecurity. And I know the North like the back of my hand. I was in Arawa House, and I think a majority of those in Arawa House thought that the SDP manifesto was the best, the SDP presentation was the best, and you can ask any of the leaders of the Arawa Joint Committee. So we are okay that people in the North understand us, and I also know that people in the North want to get out of the quagmire that they are in now, and people of Nigeria also want to do the same thing across the country. That is why you see some desperation on the part of the legacy parties try to see ways by which they can thwart people's effort, buying PVC, doing silly things, not allowing us to put billboards and notices everywhere. But people are responding, and I'm very happy that the message is clear, and that there will be a lot of surprises in February 2023.
Well, it's quite interesting when you say, I mean, the SDP had those plans. Then for one, people will say there are different candidates now. And that's a major difference between the SDP then and the SDP now. But also, it's quite interesting that you, describe that World Bank's report as irrelevant. It's actually the Nigeria Country Economic Memorandum, the CEM. And, part of the, some of the things said in that report is that it will take Nigeria about a decade to get back to per capita income level recorded. And it went back to 2000, saying that Nigeria was a rising star globally in the 2000s. But this fast growth was not accompanied by robust job creation. So tell us, in terms of your policy plans, what sort of projections do you have for Nigeria? If you say that you want, both regions, as it were, to even catch up beyond, the north and south dichotomy, what are your projections for Nigerians in terms of, the time, short, medium? We can leave long out of this, but short and medium plans, the indices you would like to show Nigerians as the job you're doing.
Okay, one thing is clear. You're right that the candidates are different. The only thing is that the candidate now is much improved. The candidate of 1993 was a perfect candidate for 1993. The candidate we have for 2023 is a perfect candidate for 2023 with modern knowledge, with an advancement. So all the good things that Chief M.Q. Abiola profiled in 1993, we've not forgotten any of them. What we have done is to improve on each of them to meet modern times. So we are better equipped now, and the evidence of what we predicted are now clearer to the people. That's number one. Number two, with respect to the World Bank document, not that it is completely useless in all its entirety, what I'm saying is that the comparative angle, perspective taken, it's like having two hungry people on the ground, and you say, one is hungrier than the other. What sense does it make? They're both hungry. It's like having two sick people in a hospital bed and say one is sicker than the other. What does it matter? What you need is to heal both of them. That's the point I'm making. Now, with respect to short-term, medium-term, what we have is this. In this country today, all the assumptions that they're having is the assumption that we're going to continue with APC or PDP or any of those people who have held us down. That's the assumption. They are not assuming, they haven't taken into account that we might have a progressive government in 2023 that is going to enforce Chapter 2 of the Constitution, that is going to ensure that there is accountability in the management of the resources of the country. I've studied that document, and that document is a partial analysis. It doesn't state how we lost all our money. It doesn't state how we gave away money in the name of trying to pay our debt, and we gave too much money away, and we depleted our reserve. It hasn't said anything about how we are losing a substantial part of our revenue to the first world coming here to steal our crude oil and all of that. It hasn't said anything about the wastages and inefficiencies that are caused by an inefficient government. So what we are trying to do, therefore, is that the projection given to us is an assumption that everything goes as it is now, and this system is not sustainable. So what we have as a plan is that once we invest in items that are listed in Chapter 2 of the Constitution, we provide adequate nutrition for all Nigerians. We provide We provide adequate medical care for all Nigerians. We provide adequate education for all Nigerians. We provide adequate housing for all Nigerians. And we promise in SDP to build 100,000 housing units in every state every year for the first 4 years. So once we do that, and all of those things will create employment, we had a 30 million job plan, which many say, oh, it's too ambitious. But we can see we've gone back 7 times to do the analysis. We've discovered that it is absolutely realistic and we can do that. And so once we do all those things, our Nigeria of the 2000 that they are saying is a yardstick is going to be less promising than the one we're having now. So I don't see anything wrong with our ability to catch up. It's the analysis of a man who is lying down. So another person, every other person is running. Right. So you can expect that the gap will widen. But if the person stands up and runs as fast as they can, and they are very good runners, then they start to reduce the deficit between them and those in the vanguard. So what we are trying to do now is to appeal to Nigerians to take into consideration the fact that analysis by Bretton Woods institution, by international analysts, is on the assumption that Nigerians are going to vote the same people back again. It's on the assumption that the status quo, which is terrible, is going to continue. It's on the assumption that it may even get worse. And that is not the analysis you get when you study the manifesto of the SDP. People are assuming that the SDP, because we are not throwing money all over the place, we're not flying jets all over the place, that we are not campaigning. But we are in your neighborhood, we're everywhere. People are responding. And we're getting a lot of partnerships. I just came in straight from Kano. I've been in Kano for 4 days. I couldn't even leave, except that I had other obligations elsewhere. People are eager to work with us. People came all the way from Katsina, Zamfara, all the rest of the Northwest.
So
and
you believe...
I've been talking to leaders, important people in the country, and they believe that we're making a headway. I believe that that analysis will not hold true for Nigeria.
So also, you think that you're the surprise package, that you'll spring a surprise in this coming election?
No, the surprise package is not me. The surprise package are the voters. Because they are assuming that the voters are dumb and that the hungry people in Kano are going to want to remain hungry for a long time. I was in Kano and I was seeing a live case of families who survive on going to dustbin to pick the back of watermelon, peeled watermelon, and they put salt in it and boil it and eat it. I've heard of families that are boiling water just so that children can cry and go to bed thinking that food is on the fire. So you think people are going to continue that kind of thing? It's not going to happen. So they will need us as much as we need them. I've been in Adamawa State, I've gone around, I've been in many states, and I said people are eager. People who are forming vigilantes in Katsina are going all over the place.
Well,
making sure that they make sure that these other parties will not come back to power.
There's this question I have to ask you.
For the elite.
Right. Pardon me.
Please.
There's this question I have to ask you. We have less than a minute to wind down. You've said that your administration will have zero tolerance for corruption. Now, we have laws. We have agencies for anti-corruption. What would your approach be? Is it to make the laws more stringent or make the agencies more brutal, so to speak?
No, it's to make the laws applicable to those in government. That is the problem. The government's job is to fight corruption inside the government. In Ahmadu Bello's time, in Awolowo's time, Okwara's time, there was no EFCC. They were not corrupt. Right. So what I want us to understand is that you have to lead a power of personal example, and you have to make sure that the law is sufficiently applicable to those who are in government. There are two theaters for fighting corruption inside government. That one, you don't need the police, you don't need EFCC. The person who is heading the government has to be clean and has to fight the corruption by example. Secondly, the corruption on the street. That's what you need the police for.
Well,
so that is what we are going to do. And I don't need the EFCC. They are there, but I don't need them to fight.
Well, we have to anchor at this point.
And I don't need them for me not to be corrupt myself.
All right, we have to anchor at this point, but it's quite an interesting conversation with you. Thank you so much for your time. We've been speaking with Barrister Adebayo Adewale, who is a presidential candidate of the SDP. Thank you so much for your time on the program tonight.
Thank you, and God bless Nigeria.
Amen. Well, that's our package for tonight, everyone. Thank you for watching. I'm Kayode Okikiolu. Coming up next is Election 101 in 5. Good night.